All right, a very good morning. We are, it's a very chilly morning and wet morning, but everything is great, and we're looking forward to this amazing session this morning. For me, it's of great interest, and not only of great interest, but certainly of great importance. But before I welcome our guest on stage, I just want to welcome everybody out there. As we always do, I see many people again who've been on for maybe the 100th time. So, guys, thank you for all those who've come back again, and for all the newbies who've never been on this platform before. Let us know if it's your first time. Let us know if you've been here many times. Tell us where you are. Let's keep it nice and engaging and fun, which is always meant to be. It's not easy out there, so we have to bring in that humorous element, that fun element, at the same time bringing in its inspiration and education and giving us that extra edge to do better in what we do in our daily lives as an entrepreneur and or business owner, if you like. So guys, a very big welcome. This morning's topic is going to be hugely important. You know, the campaign with Experian over a few years has been absolutely awesome, absolutely insightful, and extremely important. But today's topic is going to be all about budgeting to boost your financial health. And and just a few kind of house rules, if you don't mind me. If something goes wrong with technology, very importantly, we'll be back. You know, don't leave us. We'll be back. But I'm touching wood right now. So far over the past 3 years, it's happened if it happened at all, it's happened very few times. But we know sometimes with load shedding and power stations blowing up, we can't always, of course, fix that in a hurry. But I'm confident this morning we're not going to have that. So, guys, there we go. Good morning, Tabiso. Good morning, guys. Good morning, Amucha. Nice to see you. First time. Well done. And I hope that's not your last time, of course. We've got some big things coming up. Christina Haystack, welcome. It's great to have you. Yeah, guys, there we go. Port Elizabeth, lovely place. Eastern Cape. I hope you guys getting some good rain down there. And there we go. Of course, first time, another first timer. It's lovely to see first timers, but it's always wonderful to see people coming back. And I think for most of our first timers, we know that your morning's experience is going to allow you to come back many more times. You know, at the NSBC, we've got a big rollout this year. We've got very exciting things coming up this year. And of course, I know Alicia from our team is going to put the link on in 2 days' time. We do a great event called Breakfast Connect. It's the world famous business to business networking event, full of prizes, unbelievable networking, great breakfast, great entertainment. And we know that the power of networking is one of the keys to getting ahead in life as a business owner. So watch the space on the right, see the link. And guys, if you haven't registered for Breakfast Connect this Friday morning, it's going to be an awesome experience. I always look forward to it. We've seen incredible deals coming to pass. There it is. Thank you, Alicia. There's the connection for Breakfast Connect. Have a look at what's happening. Get on board. Come and join us. It's going to be exciting stuff. But of course, this morning is all about budgeting. It's all about boosting your financial health. And there's no finer person. I've had the absolute pleasure of meeting Ans Gerber a few days ago. High energy, high talent, hugely talented. And I'm looking forward to this. So let me welcome Ans on stage. Ans is the head of data insights and marketing services at Experian. And Ans, good to see you. Thank you for taking your time out this morning so you can help others out there really achieve their budgeting objectives. And not only that, but emphasizing the importance of budgeting for a business owner.
Absolutely. Good morning, Mike, and good morning, everybody that's joined us online. It is an absolute privilege for me to be here. Thanks so much, Mike. This is what makes me come back to work, making an actual difference in real people's real lives. So this is what makes me tick. Thank you for the opportunity.
Absolutely. And of course, I've got some amazing questions. I've just been giving these questions. We keep it interactive. We keep it spontaneous. So I have to sometimes revert to all the audience out there. I don't learn these things off by heart. I can't do that in 6 seconds. So I've got this amazing brief in front of me here of the kind of questions I'm going to put forward to Ans so we can have an interactive discussion. Shane, thank you for that nice comment. And of course, Annette, and I hope I got the right answer, Annette, Bresta. Look forward to seeing you on Friday. So let's get into it, Ans. And you and I engaged I think within the last 2 weeks about this important factor and all the other key areas about really becoming financially fit. We know that the spin-offs are so incredibly important. First of all, ensuring that you stay in business and build a great business. On the other side is, getting funding out there, improving credit scores out there. It's all around running a great business so we can stay in business and so we can employ others. So I've got some great questions for you, Ans. Let me start off, if you don't mind me. Now, we are on a journey to help consumers and small businesses become financially fit. This is key to building the South African economy. Can you explain some of the practical things we should be doing to become financially fit?
Sure. Thanks for that question, Mike. That's there's so much to understand in terms of practical things that we can do to become financially fit. I think first and foremost, it's a matter of, and this is regardless of whether you're in your business capacity or in your personal capacity, you need to understand where you are currently at. You need to understand your current situation. Now, from a financial perspective, obviously, I work for a credit bureau, so credit is part of that. And I know we've spoken about credit scores and the rest of it. So knowing your score is absolutely part of it. But there's way more to financial fitness than credit only, right? I'm sure you'll agree with me. We all need to deal with income and expenses. We all need to understand what our current situation is, just in terms of what we can afford and what we cannot afford. So for me, something like understanding a budget is a key element of that. So knowing and understanding what your current situation is, both from a credit but also from a budget perspective, I think that is really key. It's when we understand this current situation that we're really in a position to understand what the challenges are that we're facing and start to strategize around how we improve our situation. Now, I realize that when it comes to things like budgeting, it sometimes can become a bit scary, right? Because it's like putting all of your dirty laundry out there, if you want, so to speak. But that's part of the process of becoming better at it, right? Facing it head on, unpacking it as it is, and then improving on that as you sort of go through the process. I once heard the saying where it went something like, budgeting is telling your money where to go. Where if you fail to budget, you only learn afterwards where your money went. And I think that's the key for me.
Yeah, and the thing is, I know, our research over 15 years will tell us, whenever a new entrepreneur starts a startup, let's call it that way, and there's one thing that is always done. I love that forecasting scenario when, and you will know this, when people forecast income and expenses, when people forecast income, they always forecast a rosy income in the road ahead. And then, of course, their expenses. But what always turns out is that the income is never what you projected. It's a lot lower. And your expenses are a lot higher. So the important thing about income and expense, one's got to be really realistic and accurate about your forecasting on the income and extremely accurate on, of course, expenses. And this is where we know as business owners, we've got to be brutal on the money, totally brutal on the money. Don't buy the things that we don't need. Otherwise we will soon be selling the things that we need. So forecasting and budgeting, which is an integral part, is hugely vital. And I'm getting some WhatsApps, not only on my screen on the right, but also on my phone. Now, I don't know if you're coming to this just now, Ans, but are there budgeting tools out there like templates that people can really start utilizing to assist them in their process of budgeting?
100%. Yes. We're actually coming to that a bit later, but
Okay.
I can mention it now already. So there's lots of budgeting tools available. I think for starters, obviously it is something that you can do with a pen and a paper exercise, right? So you don't have to wait to get to a solution before starting to budget. But there is something to be said for having a proper budgeting tool at your disposal that will remind you to keep it up to date. That's the first thing. So that you can remember to actually keep your budget as real as it can be. That's the first thing. And secondly, a budget is typically done monthly, right? So if you are in a position to build a bit of a history on whatever platform you choose to use, that'll be awesome. Because that will also inform your future predictions, as you referred to earlier, Mike. So just in terms of tools that are available, I know we've spoken about this previously as well in some of the other webinars that you've had with Experian, but we've recently launched the Up web-based app for consumers and for small and micro enterprises, where you can use the budgeting facility on there that is available currently. So in that budgeting facility there, you'll see there's space for income to be itemized as well. But there's also nice categorized, itemized expense categories in there that you can update manually. There, it's also coming on the banner at the bottom there. So happy for everybody to go and register for Up. You go to that website and register, and you can add the shortcut link to your homepage on your device. And then on there, you will also find there's a budgeting tool. Maybe I can just also add at this point, the benefit of using the Up budgeting tool that we have available on that web app is the fact that we also have the facility to pull your expenses as it's visible from the bureau as part of your budget. So let's say, for example, you've got a loan and there's a specific repayment amount that also has an impact, obviously, on your budget, right? Then we can pull that data directly from the bureau, and that will already be pulled into your budget calculation for you. So that makes it nice and easy from that respect. And again, we spoke earlier about being accurate and being realistic. Few things get more realistic and accurate than the actual bureau expenses as it's referred to from the bureau. So I would really encourage your attendees and SMEs and really from a consumer perspective as well to register for Up and make use of this budgeting facility.
Absolutely, and I mean, when it was launched, I was given the privileged insight, and I of course immediately accessed it and uploaded up. And for me, it's a full circle solution. It's completely free. There's no agenda, and it gives you everything that you need. In a matter of a few seconds, you know your credit score, you've got all the education there, you've got all the tools there, and all I can say to everybody out there, it's absolutely imperative. Not only an amazing tool, it's an amazing but an imperative tool to be part of your life as a consumer. And because we always remember, business owners are also consumers. So as a business owner, you're a consumer, to understand your profile and also to see what can be done around that to improve that. I certainly think it's one of the greatest tools out there that I've ever seen launched. And we are encouraging not only our attendees today, but of course SME South Africa to really ensure that they get access to this, because it's a meaningful access and it makes a massive difference. I mean, just on that side, I know I'm jumping a gun a few times here, Ans, because I don't know what questions are coming up. So my apologies for that. But I mean, at least, more than 70% of consumers and business owners out there don't know their credit scores and don't access them. And people find that historically quite scary to do that. They think they've been tracked or whatever. But it's an incredible part of a consumer's process and a business owner's process who are running an SME to do that and to be on top of that every day. So please, guys, if you haven't done that out there, I do it. All the people around me do it. Get access to it because it's meaningful.
Mike, I might just elaborate on something. Sorry for interjecting there, but on something that you just mentioned there. The fact of the matter is, however uncomfortable it may be for you to have a look at whether it be your credit score or do an accurate budget, the fact of the matter is the rest of the financial world out there looks at that, and that is how you are assessed. Because every time you do an application for credit, two things are looked at: your credit reputation, that's the credit score that we've spoken about, but also your affordability. And affordability comes directly from one's budget. So if you choose not to look at it, regardless of whether you choose, the rest of the world is looking at it. So better for you to understand how the rest of the financial world sees you and to take ownership of that proactively. And the great thing about UP is, and you mentioned it there as well, it is absolutely free of charge.
And just to add to that, with your own credit score and your business credit score, it also educates very quickly on what you need to do to improve your score quickly. And
Yes.
everyone's score out there, but we have to remember we all own our own scores, we all own our own credit profiles, and we can, in a very, very short space, take our credit scores to a level that would be excitingly approved by the financial world out there. And also, like you say on budgets, there's two things that we look at out there in the financial world: is your credit score, and of course your affordability. Do you have the money to repay the loan? And this is where your budgeting allows you to produce cash flow, and of course to have excess cash flow in order to do that. Because then you're 90% of the way there, and that's really important to do. And what's also quite interesting, only 1% of formal SMEs access formal funding because of these simple reasons that we can fix.
Yeah.
Now, let's get back to, sorry for that off course there, but I think it is an important part of the discussion. Let's get back to budgets. We have all heard of it. Please explain in simple terms what a budget is.
Well, we're speaking about financial health and financial fitness, right? So I think it's probably apt to equate a budget to something like a health or a growth chart that you have for a baby. I remember when my kids were small, they were literally off the charts, but that's a different topic altogether. There's this little growth chart where you go to the sister or the clinic every month or so, and the baby is weighed and measured, and there's vaccinations being provided and all the rest of it. And this health card is literally providing a view of the historical growth and growth and development of the baby. And it's very similar with a budget tool, right? Or with a budget. Firstly, it provides you a view on what the current situation is in your business, but it also showed you how, if you diligently complete your budget every month, how your business has grown or how your financial management processes has improved over time. There's one exception, I think, though, where if one likens a budget to a growth chart, and that is the fact that a budget can be used both for planning purposes and retrospectively. And actually, that's the way a budget should be used, right? So at the beginning of the month, you plan this and this and this is going to be my expenses for such and such kind of expenses that I need to incur. Then going back later during the course of the month or at the end of the month and reviewing that budget, confirming that what I had in there, what I had planned originally actually transpired, and that was the true events that happened. In that way, my history of budgets remain accurate, and I can see how my business is actually performing.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, no, absolutely. And just to touch on our attendees out there, as we're talking about budgets, please, if you've got any questions that you'd like us to address, pop them onto the chat. And if they're coming too fast and furious and we can't get to you, we will get to you after the session. So please use this time to pop some questions in if you have them, and I'm sure we can get to answer them. And here's a question that's come through us. What does a good budget look like?
Well, ideally, we'd all like to have less expenses than income, right? We'll like to have more income than what we have expenses. So that's the ideal. But in oftentimes, and I think specifically in the SME world, if we're in early stages of a small business, we find that we need to keep investing money just to make the books sort of balance initially. Ideally, that shouldn't be the state for a long period. That would just be for the initial period, and then we want to get to a place where you have more income than expenses, to such an extent that you have leftover bits or leftover funds that you can either save or reinvest in your business, and that's the ideal place to be. That's where the business really and truly wants to be, where you can start to fund growth for your business from the income that you generate in your business. That's after all the expenses have been covered. So that's the ideal of what a budget should look like ideally. I mentioned earlier, but I just want to reiterate, a budget is really meant to work for you. Don't feel like you are overwhelmed with this notion of now I need to do this budget and this is a scary affair. A budget is meant to serve you as the business owner, as the consumer. And that is your way of planning and moving forward from a financial fitness perspective.
Now, Ans, I've got another question coming through on WhatsApp. You mentioned, we both mentioned, in fact, that affordability word, which we know is hugely important for a funder to grant funding. Where and how does a funder look for affordability? What do they look for, and where do they look for it? And what kind of affordability are they looking for when it comes to granting funding?
Right. So there's two things that we need to consider here, or that funders typically look at. The first would be expenses that are already visible on the bureau. Remember, funders pull or make a call to the bureau to actually get a view on what your current expenses are from the bureau's data assets. And that is why, again, it's so important to go and do that budget for yourself on up, so that you can see what the data is that the rest of the world out there sees about you. So you know what the world can see from what your expenses are from a bureau perspective. So that's the first element that's considered when lenders look at affordability. And then, if anybody here has ever applied for funding, you might recall that you had to fill in a form typically. Well, now it's probably online, but I remember way back when we applied for our home loan, we had to fill in a physical form. Where we had to do a bit of a budget exercise ourselves, where we had to indicate what our typical running expenses are for our own household budget, and where we had to explain to the bank that this is actually that our income allows us to also pay for a bond expense. This is now a bond example, but just to sort of elaborate on the example, and the point that I'm trying to make here is the fact that there's information that we share directly with the bank as well when we apply for a loan around our own budgets as well.
Okay. Now, Ans, Geraldine van Wyk on the right there, you'll see on her chat. Is it Geraldine? Geraldine, sorry, it's Geraldine. How long does it usually take a small business to reach this ideal budget with a small profit? It's a big question, I understand that.
It's a huge question. It's a huge question. And it's almost like asking what is the length of a piece of string. And this is really, it's a matter of how prudent you are in obviously managing the available funds that you have, but also in terms of how well you've planned for your business. So I think there's a real element there of proper marketing. I mean, there's all sorts of things that feed into success of a business, right? To get to that point where you are profitable to such an extent that you have a bit extra to save or reinvest in your business. So this is actually an ecosystem answer. It's not just a one thing. And that is why it's absolutely a matter of hats off from my side to all small business owners, because it's such a catch-all thing that you're doing. It's not like you have a marketing department or a financial department or HR department. You need to carry all of this as a small business owner. So unfortunately, not a quick answer for that one, Geraldine. There's no ideal or perfect or typically how long does it take. But the key thing here, I think, is the following. That one continues to track accurately how you are currently behaving from a affordability or from a budgeting perspective. So if you are keeping to what you plan to expend or earn from an income perspective, one, and two, to track if you are improving. So that's the other beautiful thing about the budget. And this is the data analyst in me coming out, but please bear with me for a second. Because one of the great things about the budget is you develop a time series. You have a whole history of information where you can see how you have been improving over time with being more diligent and more careful in terms of how you spend your available income. So that, I think, is the thing here, Geraldine, to keep track of how you are making progress from a budgeting perspective.
Now, you'll see Craig Lawrence is asking, do you have a tool to help a business owner understand where their break-even point is?
And break-even point in this regard is where your income and expenditures sort of match up, at least. Yes, exactly. That's exactly the purpose of our budgeting tool on Up. And that's actually how it works. So it calculates for you once you've populated your expenses and all of your income, and we've pulled all the bureau expenses as well. It does a little surplus or shortage calculation for you, and you track that then literally month on month. So that's part of the solution, and it's calculated for you as part of Up.
Yeah.
Sure.
Thank you, Ans. Ans, over the years, I've, a big thing for me personally is, and the people around and a lot of the talks that I do, sales is a very important part of the budgeting process, because if you've got an abundance of sales, cash will flow, and if cash flows, you can fix anything. You can fix your HR, your marketing, your PR, and of course it comes down to this: a big income with low expenses equals a great business. And I think that's utopia for every business owner. So the quicker one can get to that is, of course, that's what really is the dream there. And that's what we've got to do. And sometimes the problem with a lot of people, business owners around the world, instead of working hard at the coalface out there, that they borrow money instead of working hard at it. Because you can only borrow once and borrow once. And I think we've all got to understand we've got to borrow money for the right reasons. And there's many right reasons to borrow money, for growth or equipment funding or whatever it may be. But we mustn't borrow for the wrong reasons. Get out there at the coalface, find those big customers, conclude big deals, and grow top line quickly. And at the same time, keep those expenses to a minimum. Only create expenses that are totally necessary, and make sure that profitability is there so you can show affordability if one has the need to, of course, access funding.
Yes, absolutely. And that I think is part of it as well, the whole strategic view of it. I think for a business owner, a budget becomes part of a strategy tool, because you need to think and plan, where am I going to spend, and what is the return or the value that I'm going to expect given this expense that I'm going to incur? Is it going to help me grow that income bit at the top of my budget? Or is it going to be just one other tick box exercise that I really don't know what value I'm getting for that expense that I'm incurring?
Absolutely. Now, any budgeting tips to share? And I think it's culminating in what we've said, but coming down to actual tips. What tips have you got to share, Ans, if you don't mind?
Sure. So I think we've spoken about budget balancing, right? Or your income at least meeting your expense demands, right? And for that, we often, especially in the early times of a business, may find ourselves in a place where our income doesn't quite cover all our expenses. And then it becomes valuable to somehow prioritize our expenses. And I sort of alluded to it earlier in my comment around strategy and deciding carefully where we're going to spend our money. So if we were able to categorize expenses to essential expenses, I cannot go without incurring this expense, I must do this, and non-essential or niceties expenses, then that's a great way of understanding where I can refine or fine-tune my budget. And that's one of the beautiful things also that we have on Up, where we have that categorization already added onto the budget facility, where you can distinguish between essential and non-essential budgeting elements. And then you can choose. It's within your power as a consumer and a small business owner to decide whether or not you're going to go for this expense. So I think that for me is the first tip. Prioritize expenses in a way that makes sense. The second tip would be to check your budget regularly. It's not something you do once off and then it's finished and flung. It doesn't work like that. It's a live thing that you need to keep tracking and keep making sure that it reflects reality as best as possible. Back to our first, I think if there's one thing that we should remember from today, it's the fact that a budget must reflect reality. It must reflect reality.
I can't agree with you more. I mean, it is, and be realistic and totally realistic, and even be more conservative than realistic, because it doesn't always turn out the way you want it to. And sure, we can plan for our sales and we can plan for our expenses, but be absolutely conservative. But also I often think of this, Ans. We have a conservative, realistic budget, and then we have a dream budget. That's just bonus at the end of the day. But of course, as we go along and we look at our own history, we can create these different scenarios based on historical. But for a brand new business, rather focus on that conservative, realistic budget and make sure you do everything to get there, especially on essential expenses, and limit those non-essential expenses. Now, before we move on here, I've got Salani. He's got an interesting statement. Salani from Honeydew says, my dilemma is that I am good with managing my personal budget, but when it comes to managing my business budget, it's a gray area.
I think one must unpack what the reason for that gray area is. The key ingredient for proper budget management is, whether it's in your personal capacity or in your business capacity, discipline. Okay. And this discipline doesn't just come around in the form of checking the budget and making sure that it reflects reality. It also is discipline in the form of, I use my budget as a planning tool, and I use this budgeting plan that I make in the beginning of the month as a way of keeping myself to my plan. So there's another sort of level of discipline that comes into that. And that becomes tricky, especially if you're in the thick of things in your business. Let's say you run a coffee shop and the customers are around and you need to buy more milk and all the rest of it. And there's no time to take careful note of all the expenses that you're incurring, making sure all the cash comes in that should be coming in. You feel overwhelmed in the moment. It's a matter of getting into the discipline and getting into the place where you update your budget, your planned budget, as frequently as needed, so that come month end, you're not overwhelmed with the amount of catch-up fixes, updates that you need to do later in the month. So discipline.
And to add to that, like it's Alani, he's probably been doing his personal budget for some years, so he's used to it. Whereas maybe Solani's situation, his business is fairly new, so he's not used to doing a business budget. And that's when, keep practicing and keep reviewing and changing until that business budget becomes to the perfect, or as perfect as you can.
Yeah. And I think there's something beautiful also around having that view of the history of your budget. Once you started and created this discipline to see how your business has grown, there's something motivating in that. To see, there was a time when I made plans. It took me a while to get it to come to fruition, but we did get there. And this is something that we can do again in future in our business. So I think I also look at the budget as a sort of, this is history and we have overcome. Take inspiration from that. I just wanted to comment also on something that you said earlier, Mike, where you said that we sometimes are optimistic around our budgets. I realize that SME owners are positive by nature. They are entrepreneurs, so they are obviously looking for opportunities. I get it. I'm always one for dreaming big, but hope for the best, keep planning for the worst, so that if the worst does come to pass, it won't sink the business and it won't sink you in your personal capacity either. So just be prepared as best you can. Back to the point of a budget being a planning tool, as well as keeping me honest in terms of what I planned and what happened in reality.
Yeah. Like you say, I always say, think big, but adopt the magic of tiny steps. And I think that keeps our feet on the ground. And let's not spoil our vision and our dream of why we started out in the first place. Because as business owners, we're enthusiastic, we're optimistic, we believe in ourselves. But think big, never stop thinking big, but adopt that magic of tiny steps. But I just want to touch on something that we said earlier. A lot of people's perception is when they see their credit report, that's where it is. And sometimes on that credit report, things aren't the way it is. Maybe the address is wrong, or maybe there's too many email addresses, or possibly the financial information is not the way it is. And the perception out there in many cases that we've seen is that people, your information cannot be changed. But in discussion with your amazing team over there for many months, If it's wrong, there's a team there who can assist to make sure that the information is correct. Is that correct, Ans?
100%. Thanks for that, Mike. Yeah, so back to our point earlier of if the rest of the world sees you in a particular way, why not make sure that you see how the rest of the world sees you? And that's exactly where the Bureau report also comes in. So if you notice that there's something inaccurate on a Bureau report, you as a consumer absolutely have the power to contact the Credit Bureau. And that's, incidentally, that's part of the functionality that we have available on app as well, on this credit, on the web-based app. You can actually ping the Bureau right there from the app and push an inquiry or a request through to us. We will then engage with you in terms of fixing whatever it is that is inaccurate in terms of the data that we have on Bureau and that you can see on your credit report. So 100% on that. I think that is one development area for South African consumers as a whole. We know our ID numbers, right? And we take ownership of our ID numbers. But we sickle a bit to take ownership of our credit scores and our credit reports, which are actually also an important element to keep track of and to own.
Mm-hmm. Don't you enjoy Eliza's statement on the right there, Ans? Hello, I'm from the company Baked and Cooked in Passion.
Love it. Love it. I need to know.
Nice comment there. I've got a final question, but I know that I jumped the gun very early in our discussion, but I'm gonna mention it and see if there can anything add to that. Is budgeting mostly a pen and paper exercise? I know you've touched on that, Ans, but if you want to add further flavor to that.
Obviously, it can be a pen and paper exercise, right? But the key thing from having a tool and having some digital version of your budget available is the fact that you can track it. And it's easy to see how different months compare, and there's a reminding element of it as well. So you will sort of see, if you go onto the app, I did complete my budget for April, for example, but there's nothing in May. Let me quickly populate the May budget as well. So the nice thing about having a budget tool is it sort of reminds you, and you have the history available literally at the tip of your fingers. And when it comes to things like not just planning your budget, but also then keeping your budget real and reflective of what's actually happening in reality in your business or in your personal capacity as well, you have it right there in the palm of your hand on your phone, and you can update the expenses there to reflect reality as you go along through the month.
Absolutely. Now, to all our attendees out there, before I conclude and just thank Ans and Experian for what they do for small business South Africa, is that do yourself a favor, do your family a favor, do your business a favor, do your friends a favor. You know, I've done it, I do it. There is no agenda attached. You have to understand that. There it is on the right side of your screen. Click onto it, get access to that app. Just have a look at it and see how exciting it is and use it, because it's going to make a massive difference quickly, seamlessly, and easily. And that's what I love about it, because most entrepreneurs, as we know, especially me, I hate administration and I hate complex issues. So this really takes it out from that side. But I've just got here from, is it Sherry or Sherry? My apologies for pronouncing it incorrectly if I have. Hi, Mike. Can I budget for fluctuating expenses?
Oh, great question. Great question. So if you already know that you have fluctuation in your expenses from your history, right? You must now already have a nice history of budgeting, and you know that expenses typically fluctuate way more than you plan initially. Then that means that you are now at a place where you would know we need to budget a little bit extra, and there comes in the prioritization. So if I know that there are expenses that are not necessarily essential, and I've prioritized my expenses according to that criteria, then I can know right up front from the beginning of the month, let's wait before we incur that expenses. So that as the month progresses, I've got that cash available to cover that unplanned for essential expenses. So that I don't now come out of pocket prior to month end, but still have this essential expense that I need to cover, didn't plan for, but now it's a must do. And that, I mean, life happens, right? We realize that. But the point is, make the impact that has on your business as small as possible by planning for it proactively and understanding which expenses that I'm incurring are not really essential, and delaying those if I don't absolutely have to incur those.
Yeah. Ans, insightful. Alistair, thank you for your comment. Very insightful. Thank you for sharing. We've had amazing comments today. I find that, I find these topics and so incredibly important. I learn every time. And I always say, if I can take something small away from this to make a massive difference in the life of myself, then of course it's been worthwhile. And I can tell you now, I've taken more than one thing. So Ans, thank you so much. And to all our attendees out there, before you leave, please, if you're not joining us as yet on Friday morning, join us. We've got comments from all over South Africa. It's a great experience. It's the most unmatched business to business networking experience. It's about meeting others. It's about getting ahead. It's tough out there. It's an insightful experience. If you haven't seen the link to register for Breakfast Connect, I'm sure Alicia will pop it up quickly. But if not, you can go to the NSBC homepage, www.nsbc.africa. You will see the homepage, top tab events. Just go and click on Breakfast Connect. Have a look what's happening. And we look for those of you, I know many here are coming on Friday. For those of you who are not and would like to, it's not too late. There's a couple of tickets left. But to all our attendees out there, it's because of you we can do what we do. We're very grateful for your support of the NSBC and for organizations like Experian. To you, Ans and Experian, thank you for what you do for SME South Africa. We can't also do what we do without people like you, Ans, and of course, the amazing brand Experian. So thank you all. We'll touch base soon. Follow closely. Big things are coming up this year. We look forward to engaging again. Ans, thank you again. Have a wonderful day.
Thank you, Mike. Thanks so much, everybody.
Up your game with Experian's free credit information and education app. App by Experian gives you a credit budgeting and learning experience to help you take control of your financial health. Step up and take control of your finances. With App's budgeting tool, you can set up your first budget along with tips to help you. App pulls in your bureau data and keeps a record so you can compare each month's budget as you progress. Improve your credit score to get a thumbs up. Your credit score is the single most important financial score you'll ever get. On App, it takes less than a minute to get your credit score. To better understand and improve your score, we have top tips to help you. Learn to build up your credit report and improve your finances. Enhance your knowledge about your credit, money, and personal information with infographics, articles, podcasts, and videos written by experienced experts. Upscale yourself in a simple and fun way. Managing money and credit can be confusing, but Up is here to help. Brush up your financial understanding by exploring our Gelazar courses for free. Once you've set up your profile, you're in control to manage your profile and preferences as you need. And because security is everything in our digital age, Up uses the latest in security technology to ensure your information is secure. We're upping our game by developing an app to help you better control your credit and money. So, step up and sign up for free to Up by Experian at www.app.experian.co.za. Brought to you by Experian. Experian South Africa Pty Ltd is a registered credit bureau with the National Credit Regulator in terms of the National Credit Act. Registration number NCR CB16.